The smell hit me first. Expensive perfume lingering where it shouldn't be. 3 in the morning, standing in my own kitchen, staring at Lila's suitcase sprawled open on the guest bed like a confession. Black lace, red silk, things I hadn't seen her wear in months. All packed for her emergency business trip to Chicago. My wife of 12 years was many things, ambitious, calculating, cold when it suited her, but sloppy wasn't one of them. Yet here was her Louis Vuitton bag, contents spilling out like secrets she couldn't keep contained anymore. "You're up? That's new?" Lila's voice cut through the silence, sharp as always. I turned to find her in the doorway, still in her work clothes despite the hour. Her sister Danielle stood behind her, arms crossed, wearing that familiar look of barely concealed contempt. "Couldn't sleep," I said, keeping my voice level. "Your perfume's on the guest pillow. Odd place to rest your head." Lila's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or irritation at being caught. "Trust issues, Evan? Really? After everything I've done for this family?" Everything she'd done, right, like landing me a job at her sister's tech company 3 years ago, then holding it over my head ever since. Like making sure I knew exactly who held the power in our marriage. Danielle stepped forward, her HR director's smile plastic and predatory. Maybe Evan needs some time to think about what he really wants out of life. The subtext was clear enough. They'd been planning this conversation, probably for weeks. I was the obstacle they needed to remove. "I know exactly what I want," I said, meeting Danielle's stare. "The question is whether you two have the guts to ask for it directly." Lila's phone buzzed again. This time she answered it, stepping into the hallway. I caught fragments. "Tomorrow morning, and he won't see it coming, and Brandon thinks we should move faster." Brandon. The name that had been cropping up in conversations for months. Brandon from the consulting firm. Brandon with the new BMW. Brandon who apparently had opinions about my marriage. When Lila returned, her mask was back in place. "I'm leaving for Chicago in the morning. We'll talk when I get back." "Will we?" I asked. She didn't answer. Just grabbed her suitcase and headed upstairs, Danielle trailing behind like a loyal attack dog. I stood there in the kitchen, pieces clicking into place. The late nights, the mysterious texts, the way Danielle had been pushing for me to take vacation time, insisting I needed a break from work. My phone chimed, email notification. From HR no reply at techsolutions.com to eRourke at techsolutions.com. Subject, employment status update. "Dear Evan, effective immediately, your position as technical operations manager has been eliminated due to corporate restructuring. As you are currently on approved vacation leave, your final day of employment was your last worked day. No severance package applies to employees terminated while on leave. Please return all company property by end of business today. Regards, Human Resources Department." I read it twice, then a third time. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. They'd sent it while I was standing here, while Lila was upstairs packing her lingerie for Brandon. My fingers moved automatically to reply, "Thanks for the heads up. Looking forward to our next conversation. Send." Upstairs, I could hear Lila on the phone again, voice low and urgent. I climbed the steps quietly, my military training kicking in. 15 years out of the service, but some skills never fade. "Just keep him busy," she was saying. "I'll be with Brandon at the Westin. I want him out before I get home Sunday. What if he fights the termination?" Danielle's voice, tinny through the speaker. "He won't. You made sure of that with the vacation timing. Besides, he's too proud to make a scene." Too proud. They were counting on my pride, my desire to avoid confrontation. They'd studied me like a lab rat, mapped out my reactions, planned their little coup down to the last detail. The thing about being underestimated is that it gives you options. My phone rang. Jerry Brennan, my old Army buddy turned lawyer, calling at 3:15 in the morning. "Evan, sorry to wake you, but I've been reviewing that employment contract you sent me last month, the one you asked me to look at when you were worried about layoffs. Yeah? You're about to get a windfall if you play this right. Meet me at my office first thing Monday. And Evan, don't sign anything until we talk." Monday morning found me at Marty's gym, working out my frustrations on a heavy bag that had seen better days. The place smelled like sweat and old leather, an honest smell that cut through the lingering scent of Lila's betrayal. Marty O'Brien had been my spotter in basic training, my drinking buddy in Kosovo, and my best man at a wedding that now felt like ancient history. These days, he ran this boxing club and did private investigation work on the side. If anyone could help me navigate the minefield my life had become, it was Marty. So let me get this straight, he said, unwrapping his hands after our sparring session. Your wife's sister fires you while you're on vacation. Your wife's shacking up with some corporate pretty boy, and they think you're just going to roll over and take it? That's about the size of it. And you want to what exactly? Catch them in bed together? Get photos for the divorce? I shook my head. I want them to understand that actions have consequences. I want them to feel what I felt Saturday night standing in my kitchen, realizing that the two people who were supposed to have my back had been planning to put a knife in it. Marty grinned, the same expression he'd worn before we'd taken that machine firearm nest outside Pristina. Now you're talking my language. What do you need? Information, phone records, financial statements, anything that shows the pattern. And I need to know more about Brandon Cross. The consultant. I can tell you about him right now. Comes in here twice a week, always wearing designer workout gear that's never seen real sweat. Drives a BMW M3, parks it across 2 spaces so nobody scratches his paint. Tips the towel girl $5 and acts like he's doing charity work. Sounds like a real prince. Gets better. Last week I overheard him on the phone, bragging about some married woman he's been seeing. Said her husband was too stupid to notice, and that she was going to clean him out in the divorce. The heavy bag creaked as I gave it one more solid hit. I need everything you can get on him. Financial records, client list, where he lives, who he's screwing over besides me. What about your wife and her sister? Leave them to me. I've got a different plan for them. That afternoon, I met with Brian Kowalski, my former IT colleague, and the closest thing to a hacker I knew personally. We sat in his cluttered apartment, surrounded by computer equipment and empty energy drink cans. I can't do anything illegal, Brian said, fingers already dancing across his keyboard. But if you happen to have backed up your phone to a cloud service that your wife had access to, and if she happened to have done the same thing, hypothetically, there might be some very interesting text messages and call logs available for review. The screen filled with data. Months of communication between Lila and Brandon, between Lila and Danielle, between all 3 of them, and various other players in their little conspiracy. The picture that emerged was uglier than I'd imagined. They'd been planning this for 6 months, ever since Brandon's consulting firm had landed the Tech Solutions account. Lila had fed him inside information about upcoming layoffs. Danielle had manipulated the vacation schedule to make sure I'd be vulnerable when they pulled the trigger. Brandon had been promising Lila a new life, funded by whatever they could squeeze out of me in the divorce. There's something else, Brian said, scrolling through financial records. Brandon's been moving money around, setting up accounts. Looks like he's planning to disappear once this is all over. What do you mean? Offshore accounts, property purchases, under shell companies. This guy's not just stealing your wife, Evan. He's stealing from his clients, too. And when it all falls apart, he's going to vanish and leave everyone else holding the bag. I studied the screen, memorizing account numbers and transaction dates. Can you print all this? Already done. Brian handed me a thick folder. But Evan, be careful. These people have already shown they're willing to destroy you. If they figure out what you're planning, they won't, I said, because they think they already won. That evening, I drove to Vera's Tavern, the kind of neighborhood bar where secrets flowed as freely as the beer. Vera Kowalski, no relation to Brian, had been serving drinks and collecting gossip for 30 years. If there was dirt to be found on anyone in this town, she'd know about it. Evan Rourke, she said as I walked in. Heard you got the axe from Tech Solutions. Shame, really. You were one of the good ones. News travels fast. Honey, in this town, news travels faster than light. Your wife's sister's been bragging about it all weekend. Says you had it coming. I ordered a beer and settled in to listen. Within an hour, I had a complete picture of how the story was being spun. According to Danielle, I'd been a problem employee for months. According to the office gossips, Lila had been working late with Brandon Cross 3 nights a week. According to the bartender at the Westin, they'd been registered in the same suite since Friday. You know what the real shame is? Vera said, polishing a glass with practiced efficiency. That sister of hers thinks she's so smart, but she made a mistake when she fired you. How's that? My nephew works in legal at Tech Solutions. Says there's something in the old employment contracts, something about vacation time and severance pay. Danielle's too new to know about it, but it's going to bite her in the buttocks. I smiled for the first time in days. Is that so? That's what I hear. You might want to have a lawyer take a look at your paperwork. Already on it. As I left the bar, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging or you'll regret it. This is your only warning. I looked around the parking lot but saw nothing suspicious. Just the usual collection of pickup trucks and economy cars, their owners inside, drowning their sorrows or celebrating their victories. I typed back, "Who is this?" No response, but I had a pretty good idea. Jerry Brennan's law office occupied the third floor of a converted Victorian mansion downtown, all dark wood and leather-bound books that smelled like old money and older secrets. I'd been there before, years ago, when Lila and I had drawn up our wills and prenup. Ironic, really, how that prenup was about to become very relevant. "Evan, my friend, you look like hell," Jerry said, gesturing for me to sit across from his massive oak desk. "Feel worse. Please tell me you have good news." Jerry opened a thick file and smiled the way sharks smile at wounded seals. "Oh, I have spectacular news. Your wife's sister just handed you the lottery ticket of wrongful termination cases." He pulled out a copy of my original employment contract, the one I'd signed 3 years ago, when Danielle had first arrived at Tech Solutions. Yellow highlighter marked several paragraphs in Section 12, Employee Protections and Severance. "Read this," Jerry said, pointing to subsection 12.3. I read aloud. "In the event that an employee is terminated during approved vacation leave, said employee shall receive severance compensation equal to 10 times their annual salary multiplied by years of service, payable immediately upon termination." Jesus Christ. It gets better. This clause was added to protect senior employees from exactly the kind of corporate restructuring games that Danielle tried to pull. The old HR director insisted on it after a lawsuit in 2019. But here's the beautiful part. Danielle's so new she doesn't know it exists. She thought she was being clever, timing your termination for maximum impact. Instead, she just triggered the biggest payout in company history. I did the math in my head. My salary times 10 times 3 years of service, $600,000. "There's more," Jerry continued. "According to your prenup, any severance pay or legal settlements are considered separate property, not subject to division in divorce proceedings. Even if Lila takes you to court, she can't touch a penny of this money. And the company has to pay? Oh, they have to pay. It's ironclad. They can't claim ignorance. The clause is right there in black and white. They can't claim financial hardship. Tech Solutions just posted record profits. They can't even stall because the contract specifies immediate payment." I leaned back in the leather chair, feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. What's our next move? We're going to walk into that boardroom Thursday morning and present them with a bill. And Evan, I suggest you bring an audience. The bigger the crowd, the less likely they are to try any last-minute legal maneuvering. Thursday morning, I stood outside the Tech Solutions building with an entourage that would have made a rock star jealous. Jerry, of course, briefcase in hand and looking like justice personified. Marty, because I needed someone to watch my back. Vera, because she'd insisted on coming to see the show. Mrs. Drummond from next door, because she'd somehow heard about it and refused to be left out. Even Brian had shown up, laptop bags slung over his shoulder in case we needed technical support. The lobby was buzzing with activity as employees filtered in for the morning shift. Word had gotten out that something big was happening and nobody wanted to miss it. Danielle met us at the elevator, her professional smile strained at the edges. "Evan, I wasn't expecting you today. I thought we'd settled everything with your termination." "Oh, we're definitely going to settle everything," I said, right upstairs in front of the board. The elevator ride was silent except for the soft jazz playing overhead and the sound of Danielle's rapid breathing. She kept glancing at Jerry's briefcase like it contained a bomb. The boardroom was exactly as I remembered it. Long mahogany table, floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the river, oil portraits of the company founders staring down with disapproval. CEO Marcus Webb sat at the head of the table, flanked by the other board members. They looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Rourke," Webb said, "I understand there's some confusion about your termination package." "No confusion at all," Jerry replied, setting his briefcase on the table with a satisfying thunk. "My client was wrongfully terminated, and we're here to collect the compensation he's legally entitled to." Danielle stepped forward, her confidence returning. Mr. Rourke was terminated due to corporate restructuring. As he was on vacation leave at the time, no severance package applies. Ms. Hayes, Jerry said, pulling out the contract, I'd like you to read Section 12, Subsection 3 out loud, please. I don't see what... Read it. Danielle's hands shook slightly as she took the document. Her voice cracked halfway through the clause about vacation termination payouts. By the time she finished, the color had drained from her face completely. Webb's coffee cup hit the floor with a crash that echoed through the sudden silence. How much? He asked quietly. $600,000, Jerry replied. Payable immediately. That's impossible, Danielle sputtered. Nobody gets that kind of severance. You would have known if you'd bothered to read the contracts before you started playing games with people's lives, I said. But you were too busy plotting with your sister and her boyfriend to do your actual job. The room erupted. Board members started talking over each other, demanding explanations from Danielle, who was now visibly sweating. Webb was on his phone with the company's legal department. Through the glass walls, I could see employees gathering in the hallway, phones out, recording everything. My own phone buzzed with a text from Lila. What the hell are you doing? Brandon says you're at his client's office making threats. I showed the message to Jerry, who grinned and typed back, collecting what I'm owed. Hope you're enjoying Chicago. Another buzz. This isn't over, Evan. Jerry typed again. You're right. It's just getting started. Webb ended his call and looked directly at me. Mr. Rourke, our legal team confirms that the contract language is unambiguous. We'll have a check ready by end of business today. Certified funds, Jerry added, and we'll need a written acknowledgement that Mr. Rourke fulfilled all terms of his employment contract. Done. As we filed out of the boardroom, I caught Danielle's arm. By the way, I said quietly, I'm filing for divorce this afternoon. You might want to call your sister and let her know that her meal ticket just got canceled. Her face went white. You can't do this to us. I'm not doing anything to you, I replied. I'm just collecting what you owe me. In the elevator, Mrs. Drummond patted my arm approvingly. That was better than my soap operas, dear. What happens next? Next, I said, we take this show on the road. The divorce papers were filed at 3:47 p.m. on Thursday, exactly 1 hour after I deposited the certified check from Tech Solutions. By 4:15, I was standing in the parking lot of Brandon Cross's consulting firm, admiring his BMW M3 and the creative way he'd parked it across 2 handicapped spaces. Marty emerged from the building's side entrance, grinning like a kid who'd just pulled off the perfect prank. Done, he said, holding up his phone to show me the photos he'd taken. 3 dead fish, strategically placed in the air vents. Give it about 6 hours in this heat. Subtle. I'm an artist. Also, I may have accidentally spilled a protein shake on his driver's seat. The chocolate kind. Really hard to get out of leather. We drove across town to Tech Solutions, where Phase 2 of the day's operations was about to begin. I'd spent the morning shopping, and the back of my pickup truck was loaded with 365 pairs of neon-bright athletic socks. One for every day of the year, purchased in bulk from a sporting goods warehouse. The delivery was timed perfectly. 5 o'clock, right as the day shift was ending, and people were gathering in the lobby to head home. I walked through the front doors carrying the first box, Marty behind me with the second. Delivery for Danielle Hayes, I announced to the receptionist. She's going to need help carrying these up to HR. Word spread faster than wildfire. By the time I reached the 3rd floor, half the company was following me, phones out, recording everything. Danielle's office was packed with curious employees pretending to work late. What is this? Danielle demanded as I started stacking boxes of socks on her desk. A retirement gift, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. 365 pairs of socks. One for every day of unemployment you're about to enjoy. You can't do this. Security. Actually, I can. I checked with building management. As long as I'm not threatening anyone or damaging property, I'm just a concerned citizen making a delivery. The security guard who showed up was Tommy Reeves, a guy I'd known since high school. He took one look at the situation and shrugged. Looks like a legitimate delivery to me. I pulled out an envelope and placed it on top of the sock mountain. This contains documentation of your various policy violations over the past 6 months. Misuse of company resources, improper termination procedures, and conspiracy to commit fraud. I've sent copies to the State Labor Board and the Better Business Bureau. Danielle's hands were shaking as she opened the envelope. Her face went from pale to green as she scanned the documents inside. How did you... Get detailed records of your phone calls, emails, and financial transactions. Turns out your sister isn't as careful with digital security as she thinks she is. Neither are you. The crowd was loving it. Someone started a slow clap. Another person was live streaming on social media. Danielle looked around the room, realizing that her career at Tech Solutions was effectively over. There's more, I continued. I've also provided evidence that you've been sharing confidential employee information with outside parties, specifically with Brandon Cross of Cross Consulting, who's been using that information to manipulate stock prices and insider trading. That got everyone's attention. Insider trading was serious business, the kind of thing that attracted federal investigations and prison sentences. My phone rang. Lila. Evan, what the hell are you doing? I'm at your sister's office, delivering some gifts. How's Chicago? Still at the Westin with Brandon? Silence. Actually, don't answer that. I already know. Just like I know about the offshore accounts, the shell companies, and the plan to disappear to the Cayman Islands once you'd cleaned me out in the divorce. You're insane. I'm thorough. There's a difference. Oh, and Lila, you might want to check your credit cards. I canceled all the joint accounts this morning. I hung up and turned back to Danielle, who was now sitting behind her desk, looking like she'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. One more thing, I said, pulling out a small gift box. This is for you personally. Inside was a single pair of bright orange socks with unemployed printed on them in large black letters. Wear them in good health, I said. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Someone shouted, Encore! Another person started chanting, Socks, socks, socks. As Marty and I made our way back to the elevator, I could hear Danielle on the phone, probably calling Lila, probably screaming. The elevator doors closed on the sound of her voice cracking under pressure. Phase 2 complete, Marty said. What's next? Now we wait for Brandon to discover his car. Should be any minute now. Right on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're going to pay for this, you coward. I showed it to Marty, who laughed. Looks like he found the fish. Looks like he did. We drove to Vera's Tavern to wait for the evening news. The story was already spreading on social media. Sockgate was trending locally, with videos of the delivery racking up thousands of views. The local news had picked it up too, running it as a human interest story about corporate revenge. You're famous, Vera said, sliding a beer across the bar. Channel 7 wants to interview you. I'll pass. This isn't about publicity. What is it about then? I thought about that for a moment, watching the news coverage on the bar's TV. Danielle's face was plastered across the screen, looking haggard and defeated. The reporter was explaining how a disgruntled former employee had exposed a pattern of corporate misconduct. It's about consequences, I said finally. For 30 years, people like Danielle and Lila and Brandon have been playing games with other people's lives, thinking they're too smart to get caught, too connected to face any real punishment. Today they learned they were wrong. My phone rang again. This time it was Jerry. Evan, you magnificent coward. You've made the evening news in 3 states. Also, I just got a call from the SEC. They're very interested in those documents you provided about Brandon Cross. How interested? Federal investigation interested. Freeze all his assets interested. Extradition from whatever non-extradition country he was planning to flee to interested. Good. There's more. Tech Solutions just fired Danielle. Effective immediately, no severance. And they're considering criminal charges for the insider trading thing. Also, your wife's been trying to reach me all afternoon, something about wanting to work out a reasonable settlement. Too late for that. That's what I told her. See you tomorrow, Evan. We need to discuss the next phase. I hung up and raised my beer in a toast. To consequences. To consequences, Vera echoed. Around the bar, other patrons joined in. Word had spread about what I'd done, and in a town where everyone knew someone who'd been screwed over by corporate politics, I was becoming something of a folk hero. My phone buzzed one more time. Another unknown number. This isn't over. I typed back, You're absolutely right, it's just getting started. Friday morning brought rain and the kind of gray sky that matched my mood perfectly. I'd spent the night at Marty's place, partly for security and partly because I couldn't stand the thought of going home to a house that still smelled like Lila's perfume and broken promises. The morning news was full of updates on what reporters were now calling the Tech Solutions scandal. Danielle Hayes had been arrested on charges of securities fraud and conspiracy. Brandon Cross was missing, His BMW found abandoned at the airport with what one reporter described as an overwhelming fish odor. The FBI had frozen his accounts and issued a federal warrant. And Lila was on her way back from Chicago, according to the increasingly frantic voicemails she'd been leaving on my phone. Evan, please, we need to talk. This has gotten out of hand. I never meant for things to go this far. Brandon promised me it would be simple, clean, that get hurt. Please call me back. I deleted the message without listening to the rest. Jerry called at 9 sharp. We need to meet. Lila's hired Patricia Morrison. Patricia Morrison, the most expensive divorce attorney in the state, famous for destroying husbands in high-profile cases. If Lila was bringing in the heavy artillery, it meant she was desperate. Let her come, I said. She can't touch the severance money, and she can't undo what her sister and boyfriend did. What's she going to argue, that I somehow forced them to commit federal crimes? That's exactly what she's going to argue. Morrison's already filed a motion claiming you orchestrated the whole thing as part of an elaborate scheme to defraud your wife of her rightful share of marital assets. That's insane. That's expensive legal strategy. She's also claiming emotional distress, public humiliation, and loss of consortium. She wants half of everything, plus punitive damages. I met Jerry at his office an hour later. The rain had turned into a proper storm, the kind that made the old Victorian mansion creak and groan like a ship in heavy seas. We spread out documents across his conference table, financial records, phone logs, email transcripts, photos from security cameras. Here's what we know for certain, Jerry said, pointing to a timeline he'd constructed. 6 months ago, Brandon Cross landed the Tech Solutions consulting contract. Within 2 weeks, he was having an affair with your wife. Within a month, she was feeding him inside information about upcoming layoffs and restructuring plans. Within 3 months, they were planning your termination and their escape to the Cayman Islands. And the federal crimes? Brandon was using the inside information to manipulate stock prices. Buy low before bad news, sell high before good news. Classic insider trading. And he was doing it with multiple clients, not just Tech Solutions. The SEC estimates he made over $2 million in illegal profits. What about Danielle? She was the inside source, the one providing the information in exchange for a cut of the profits. We have bank records showing regular payments from Brandon's shell companies to accounts in her name. I studied the timeline, looking for weaknesses in our case. And Lila? That's where it gets complicated. She was definitely involved in the personal side, the affair, the plan to divorce you and take half your assets. But we can't prove she knew about the insider trading. Can't we? Jerry pulled out another document. Actually, we can. Brian found something interesting in her email records. 3 weeks ago, she sent Brandon a message asking about when the big payday would come through. He replied with details about stock positions and profit projections. So she knew. She knew. The question is whether we can prove it in court and whether it's worth the fight. Morrison's going to claim the emails were taken illegally, that the whole investigation was a violation of privacy rights. My phone rang. Lila again. This time I answered. Evan, thank God. Where are you? I'm at the house and I'm not coming home, Lila. Please, we need to talk. Face to face. This whole thing has been a nightmare. A terrible mistake. Brandon lied to me, told me you were having an affair, that you were planning to leave me anyway. I was hurt and confused and... Stop. What? Just stop. I've heard the recordings, Lila. I've seen the emails, the bank records, the hotel receipts. I know about the Cayman Islands accounts and the exit strategy and the plan to disappear once you'd cleaned me out. So please, just stop lying. It's on the other end of the line. Where do you want to meet? She asked finally. Vera's Tavern. 8 o'clock tonight. Come alone. Evan, come alone or don't come at all. I hung up and looked at Jerry. Time for the final act. Are you sure about this? Morrison's going to claim anything you say was coerced or obtained under duress. Let her try. I want this finished, Jerry. I want to look Lila in the eye and hear her try to explain how destroying my life was somehow justified. That evening, Vera's Tavern was packed. Word had gotten out that the final confrontation was happening and half the town had shown up to watch. I sat at the bar, nursing a beer and watching the door. Lila arrived at 8:15 looking like she'd aged 5 years in 5 days. Her usual perfect makeup was smudged, her designer clothes wrinkled. She looked around the crowded bar with obvious discomfort. Can we talk somewhere private? She asked. This is fine, I said. After all, you've made our business pretty public already. She sat down next to me, ordered a wine that Vera definitely didn't stock, settled for a beer she didn't want. Evan, I know you're angry. Angry. I turned to face her fully. Lila, you and your sister and your boyfriend tried to destroy my life. You fired me, stole from me, humiliated me, and planned to disappear with everything I'd worked for. Angry doesn't begin to cover it. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Brandon said it would be clean, that you'd never find out about us until after the divorce was final. He said you'd be better off without me anyway. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. Our marriage was over, Evan. We both knew it. We'd been going through the motions for years, sleeping in separate rooms, barely talking except when we had to. I thought this would be easier than a messy divorce. The bar had gone quiet. Everyone was listening, phones out, recording everything. So you decided to commit federal crimes instead? I didn't know about the insider trading. I swear to you, I had no idea Brandon was using the information for anything illegal. I thought he was just trying to help his consulting business. Nonsense. I pulled out my phone and played one of the recorded conversations Brian had recovered. Lila's voice, clear as day. When do you think the SEC investigation will start? We need to be in the Caymans before they freeze the accounts. Her face went white. Around the bar, people were muttering, shaking their heads. How did you get recordings of your private conversations? The same way you got access to my employment records, my financial information, my personal emails? Turnabout's fair play. You can't use those in court. They were obtained illegally. Maybe, but I can use them here, right now, to show everyone exactly who you really are. I stood up, addressing the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I present my soon-to-be ex-wife, Lila Rourke, the woman who spent 6 months planning to destroy my life, steal my money, and disappear to a non-extradition country with her criminal boyfriend. The crowd booed. Someone threw a peanut. Vera cut off the taps dramatically. Evan, please. Please what? Please forgive you? Please pretend this never happened? Please let you walk away with half of everything after what you've done? I'll drop the divorce suit. We can work something out. Go to counseling. Too late for that. I pulled out an envelope and placed it on the bar. Divorce papers. Already filed, already served. The only question now is whether you're going to prison with your sister and your boyfriend, or whether you're going to cooperate with the federal investigation. What do you mean? The FBI wants to talk to you, Lila. They have questions about your role in the insider trading scheme. They're offering immunity in exchange for full cooperation. And if I don't cooperate, then you go to prison. 20 years minimum for conspiracy to commit securities fraud. She stared at the envelope like it contained an end sentence. What do you want from me? I want you to sign a confession. I want you to admit what you did publicly in front of all these people. I want you to apologize for trying to destroy an innocent man's life for money. And then you walk away with nothing. No alimony, no property settlement, no severance pay from your criminal enterprise. You get to start over with a clean slate and the clothes on your back. The bar was dead silent. Everyone was waiting for her answer. Lila looked around the room, seeing the faces of people who'd known her for years, people who'd watched her grow up, people who'd celebrated her wedding and were now witnessing her downfall. I can't, she whispered. Then you go to prison. I finished my beer and stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed the final chapter of my marriage. My wife had a choice between taking responsibility for her actions and facing the consequences of her crimes. She chose the consequences. I dropped a 20 on the bar and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear Lila crying, could hear the crowd starting to talk again, could hear Vera cutting her off when she tried to order another drink. Outside, the storm had passed. The air was clean and cool, washed by rain and full of possibilities. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Jerry. FBI arrested Lila at her hotel an hour ago. She's been charged with conspiracy, wire fraud, and money laundering. Morrison withdrew as her attorney. It's over, Evan. You won. I looked up at the clear night sky, stars visible for the first time in weeks, and smiled. Justice had been served. The exit clause had been paid in full. The end.